Dear ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome and thank you for attending this webinar. The webinar relates to the Horizon 2020 DRS01 topic entitled Human Factors and Social, Societal and Organizational Aspects for Disaster Resilient Societies. I'm Ahmed Natchef from CEA. I'm Seren for Partner and Security NCP for France, and I'll be the animator of today's webinar. I will start by making a presentation about my comprehension of the topic. Two interventions at the webinar will follow the presentation. Firstly, the testimonial of Jean-Claude Mazy. Jean-Claude is the head of Energy and New Technology Service at the French Embassy of the Republic of Korea. Jean-Claude is also in charge of the analysis of the COVID-19 crisis management in Korea. He will explain us how the citizens in Korea are behaving individually and collectively during the crisis. He will also tell us how the Korean government is designing and implementing policies in order to overcome the pandemic. Jean-Claude will then emphasize on the extensive use of novel technologies in Korea as an efficient response to the COVID-19 crisis. The second intervention will be made by Paul-Henri Richard. Paul-Henri is social science and humanities research engineer. He is also volunteer firefighter officer. Paul-Henri is the administrator and animator of the chair crisis management at the University of Technology of Troyes in the beautiful Troyes-Champagne metropolis. I asked Paul-Henri for questions about the SSH research needed to better manage the COVID-19 crisis. Paul-Henri strived to answer the question, and he will explain his point of view on the place of the social sciences and humanities in crisis management. Finally, yet importantly, we have with us Philippe Quevauvillet, who is the policy officer at the European Commission in charge of this call. Thank you, Philippe, to be with us. So you can ask your question to Philippe, and all the speakers will be able to answer them during the question and answer session. Jérôme Canet will be managing the question and answer session. So, about the second slide.
Just a word. Sorry? I'm sorry, Armand. Just a word about the session, the question sessions. Everybody is silent during the webinar, but you have a special section questions inside the interface of the tool, and you can ask your questions here, and we will use the questions to answer them in the session.
Okay, thank you very much, Jero, for the clarification. So this is the slide shows that DRS01 is part of Horizon 2020 security subcall entitled Disaster Resilient Societies, DRS, that is itself in part of the security call. In the work program 2018 to 2020, the DRS subcall include 5 topics. DRS01 on human factors, which is the subject of today's webinar. DRS02 on technologies for first responders is a topic of tomorrow's morning webinar. DRS03 on demonstration for disaster resilient societies is the topic of tomorrow afternoon webinar. We haven't yet scheduled a webinar related to DRS04 on CBRN security. We can, if you are interested, please let us know. Please note that DRS05 on pandemic crisis management is not open in 2020 because of COVID-19. It could have been the most relevant topic this year. The challenge of the DRS subtopic is to make societies more resilient to disasters, whether natural or man-made. The intervention of Jean-Claude and Paul-Henri focus on the COVID-19 crisis in order to help us understanding the topic requirements. However, beware, the DRS subpoll concerns all types of disasters, including climate change-related events, earthquakes, space weather events, industrial disasters, and the threats of crime and terrorism. The aim is to reduce the loss of life, reduce environmental and economic damage, and make society more resilient. I always start with this slide about the characteristic of Horizon 2020 secure societies. DG Home recommends undertaking multidisciplinary mission-oriented research. The societal dimension is very important in security project. As you know, security is a balance, is a trade-off between control and freedom. So respect for privacy and civil liberties is the guiding principle of the program. Thus, the proposal should lead to solution developed in accordance with the European societal values, organization, fundamental rights, and applicable laws. So let us start with the explanation of topic DRS01. My goal is to share my own understanding in order to provide you with solid information on the topic. The ultimate goal is to help you develop proposals that respond well on the calls without biasing your ideas. So please note that only the PDF file you can download from the link on this page is official. No other document is legally binding. In this call, you see that DRS02 DRS01 is calling for its research and innovation project. This means the project should be aiming to establish new knowledge or to explore the feasibility and new process, service, or solution. For this purpose, the project may include basic and applied research, development, integration, testing, and validation on small-scale prototype in a laboratory or simulated environment. So in the DRS01 project, you can prepare for a large-scale demonstration and exercises. However, it's not required to execute in-situ demonstration during the project because we are in a RIA, research and innovation action. The second information is the project budget, that is 5 million euros. This is a usual amount for a technology project, but a very huge amount for a social science and humanities project. The reason for this is that the topic does not call for a pure SSH project. The DG Home topics are multidisciplinary, so it requires the design of integrated solution of crisis management, taking into account all aspects of human factors. The four challenges are highlighted in the topics. The citizen behavior during a crisis, as they are not well prepared, gaps in levels of disaster preparedness from place to place, associated with a need to increase risk awareness in the societies. New technologies and new media are poorly understood and poorly implemented to enhance the resilience of societies. And the fourth challenge is that some countries with a high level of disaster risk are well prepared for crisis management and resilience, it will be very useful to learn from these countries. So DRS01 is asking its related project to reach 5 main objectives. The first objective is to analyze the current crisis situation of many aspects of disaster risk management in different countries within and outside the EU and among communities in the precarious socio-economic conditions. The second objective is to provide the process of and methodology to facilitate the sharing of information and good practices between stakeholders, including representatives of citizens. The third objective is to provide recommendations to develop a culture of improved preparedness, enhanced to increase the resilience to risks. Then the fourth objective is to propose innovative strategies and processes to disaster resilience involving citizens. The objective is to test also those strategies and the processes with citizens and communities representatives of European diversity and for different types of disasters. So remember, the type of action of SU-DRS01 is research and innovation action. So the test should be done on small scale prototypes. So you don't need to do in situ validation. However, we'd like to have an in situ validation. So the fifth objective would be to make in situ validation, and validation is to prepare. It's to prepare the ground for exercises involving citizens, and to make validation and approaches in real environments. So you are going to write the concept how to are going to prepare the ground, but the in situ demonstration are not going to be done during your project, during the time life of the project. Now let us talk about the scope of DRS01. So there are 5 main aspects of research to be done in the project. Firstly, we needed to make some research on risk awareness that should encompass the whole of the disaster management cycle. So we needed to, as we said, we are working on not only on one social SSH aspect. We needed to take care of all the disaster management cycle, about the prevention through education, preparedness, knowing how to react, about the emergency management, how to collaborate and communicate between the first responders and citizens before and during an event. The response need to empower citizens to act efficiently by themselves according to more effective practices that you are going to provide in the project. And recovery is a knowledge to build back better. So when we are in a disaster, we will stay optimistic because we know that we are going to build back better. So the world will become better in the future. So the second research required, it should take into account tangible and intangible cultural heritage in order mainly to implement the concept of building back better. The third objective, not objective, sorry, the third research that should be done, it should address the diversity in risk perception and in vulnerability. The fourth research required, it should address the change management and especially the cultural changes. The five research required should assess the use of social media for different disaster scenarios. The sixth one, it should analyze both the positive and negative roles of social media and the crowdsourced data. So I'm not going to speak a lot about these researches because Jean-Claude will tell us how new technologies are used today in Korea. And finally, the seventh research required is on how to learn from other countries. So we noticed the importance of learning during the present COVID crisis. Jean-Claude will explain us about this. And Paul only, of course, will take care of answering all these questions to tell us what are the research needed in the present case of the COVID-19 crisis. So now I'll leave the floor to Jean-Claude. Jean-Claude, could you summarize to us, tell us how the crisis management is taken in Korea? Jean-Claude?
Thank you, Armand. Thank you. You hear me?
Okay.
Thank
yes,
you.
Yes,
Annyeonghaseyo from Seoul. Annyeonghaseyo from Seoul. As Armand introduced me, I am head of the Service of Energy and New Technology at the Embassy of France in Seoul. I have been asked to tell you some word about how the Korean society or which societal factor has been used by the Korean society to deal with the outbreak of COVID in March of this year. So first, we have to keep in mind that Korea is a small country, 2/3 of the surface of France, located in Asia, between two major leaders in the region, China and Japan. And I let you imagine the sacrifice that the Korean people has to make to allow their country to become the 12th richest country in the world today, while it was one of the poorest countries in 1950. And the new generation is well aware of that and is very proud of what their parents and grandparents has done, and they don't want to undo it whatever the price. Second, and what we can't forget is that South Korea is a country which is at war with the North and which stays under the threat of a new war. That means that the society, when a new threat occurs, the Korean society is a society which is behind their government when this type of threat occurs, and to help it to deal with. It has been the case in 2015 with the outbreak of MERS, the Middle East respiratory syndrome, which has been responsible of close to 200 cases in Korea and 38 deaths. It has been the worst outbreak of MERS outside of Middle East. With this epidemic, the Korean people understood that there is a new threat, they have to deal with, and they have to be more efficient to avoid a future catastrophe. It's what they have done during the 4 years until today, because they have been able to set up a specific organization using people very specialized in different field of how to treat this type of epidemic, but also by using very modern technology like CCV system, bank payment system, or using the GPS of telephone to analyze where the people who were infected, to be sure which contact they had during the week before, and to propose to their people to be tested. What we can say, another point, as every Asian country, the society distancing rules has not been a problem for Korean people. The rules has been observed very early on by all the people. It has been a problem for foreigners because they were not used to wear a mask, or not to shake hands or kiss. So today we can say that Korea is the first democratic country in the world which has been able to deal with this epidemic without to lock down the country, and without to impose strong travel restrictions. I will give the floor to Paul-Henri, and I will stay with you to respond to further questions.
Okay, thank you, Jean-Claude, for this very valuable testimonial. So, Paul-Henri.
Yes, next slide, please.
Yes.
So, good morning, everybody. I'm Dr. Paul-Henri Richard, research engineer at the University of Technology of Troyes, and administrator of the Chair of Crisis Management, co-founded with the French National Fire Officer Academy. I will talk about today to the research needs in the field of human, societal, and organizational factors for resilience from disaster. To start, I would like to congratulate and to thank all the first responders, risk and crisis managers, health workers, and volunteers who work to protect our population, especially during the current pandemic of COVID-19. Next slide, please. So we need some research on change management and culture of decision-making during crisis out of scope. And we should study the change from a logic of control, command, and centralization to a logic of networks and collective participation. There is a need for more projects that could contribute to the assessment of the territorial impacts of this pandemic. It could improve the accompaniment to the decision maker in the evolution of new systems of social development. When we took into account the present crisis, we can observe the difficulty to receive and bring together people's initiatives, like donation, 3D printing, calls for volunteers. How to enhance the power of people to act is also an interesting research topic. In the research area, the international scientific community is organized and ready to take action to fight against this pandemic. Different calls for research projects have been proposed nationally and internationally. In France, the consortium reacting, coordinated by INSERM, or the calls for project Flash COVID-19 and RA COVID-19, proposed by the National Research Agency, have been launched to respond to the emergency need for scientific research. In the area of social science, some of the selected projects by Flash COVID-19 calls are, for instance, the role of the armies in the war against COVID-19 and its perception from the population. Another example is co-constructing adequate response to handle death tolls properly in the context of COVID-19. We have also behavioral challenges in the COVID-19 crisis, the case of underwatching. And in the area of social network studies, for instance, we have digital epidemiology, social networks analysis to anticipate the level of local transmission of COVID-19 in the front zones. So could you put the next slide? We have also an interesting research topic on social networks, some of which Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and Discord are frequently used. We choose today the psychological dimension of social networks. What kind of emotion are they arousing? Why and how do social networks contribute to population resilience? The current situation shows that social networks become allies in measuring the social impact of solidarity and mutual aid initiatives. These initiatives have their origin in the emergence of proximity, like neighbor support, volunteering proposition, etc. Yet, social networks can also be enemies, which is why we should do more research in the area of fake news, their origins, and the impact they have on people's behaviors. And I want to share a personal experience. At the University of Technology of Troyes, we have installed a continuity plan and a strategic crisis management cell. And one of the major themes of this crisis cell was crisis communication. By using a communication strategy, we could inform all the community of our university, like students, parents of students, foreign students, and administrative staff. Thus, many tools were used to inform and to answer the people's questions, like websites, social networks, press release. An active observation has been put into place to find weak signals and initiatives to be integrated. Students and sometimes teachers use many chat applications, such as Discord, which is followed and traced by our communication service. I close this parenthesis. Further, in terms of security, the use of existing technology, such as drones with built-in speakers, help to encourage people to follow and to respect the confinement. However, technology doesn't solve everything and raise legal issues to protect fundamental freedoms. And another way, if we integrate potential victims and the inhabitants of affected zone in the early phase of prevention and anticipation, we find there is quicker adoption of safety measures by people. There is also a need for research on the effectiveness of emergency telephone numbers. Next slide, please. Pandemic highlights this aspect in France. The number for medical emergency, 15, have been totally overloaded. As a result, some calls took almost 30 minutes to be answered. And people call because they are worried about something, but among those calls, there could be someone with a real emergency. That's why, and that's true, that there is a real need for a unique number for emergency call, such as 112 in Europe. This number is provided with an inter-services platform which allows to triage calls and improve coordination between all first responders. That should be understood in a practical sense, as it conducted at the platform for emergency call in Paris. This call center brings together the police and the firefighter with the objective of put together to save better. The last slide, please, Hamon. So, last slide, please. It would be unrealistic to think that at the end, at the end of this crisis, all the European countries will become aligned under the same model of civil security, crisis management, and response to disaster. These activities, which are essentially sovereign, are structured differently depending on the culture, administrative organization, and the means of each country. In 2009, the ethics area of Paris hospitals has established a space for reflection process about the ethics issue of the pandemics, and the scientific board has highlighted many times that the local authority and civil society were not fully and efficiently integrating during the different phases of crisis management of pandemic. In that sense, it would be very interesting to understand why authorities and safety managers have an apprehension to include people's populations during the phases of preparation and action. During the crisis, there is still a major necessity for research in order to observe in a real situation how crisis cells operate. This is a lake. And a human science researcher must be present in all kinds of cell and coordination center, no matter the level, national or local, private or public. All these aspects are necessary to learn about crisis. And to conclude, my message is that we need to facilitate transfer between scientific results in human science and improve operational practices. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul-Henri, for this your very interesting point of view. So now we will start the question and answer session. Maybe Giro, you can. I don't think, Giro, you received many questions.
Some of them, some of them are, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, you can hear me. I will unmute Philippe. Philippe, maybe test, and I think maybe. Philippe, can you try to speak?
Yes, yes. You hear me?
Yeah, wonderful. We can hear you. We have a couple of questions that have been asked. Thank you very much for being here and for participating. We had a couple of questions from the audience. I think that are worth really clarifying and are really interesting. And I think the first question is, which are the criteria to consider an organization as first responders? As first responder, the question is: are only the national civil protection as a first responder, or department civil protection within a municipality or region or country?
Yeah, I had actually a question from a Portuguese proposer about this, and he sent me a list of a first responder organization. My response to him was really about the operational character, you know, about the first responders, because what qualifies really what we mean by first responders are the categories of people who are really acting on in the field. So, for example, I had some hesitation about academies, you know, because there are some academies who are only which are only dealing with training, for example. If the people who are trained are not really, or the personnel of the academy are not really active operationally in the field, it might be a little bit challenged by the evaluators. So there is no real criteria about national civil protection or departmental. It's really the point that the people, the first responders entity, has to be really demonstrating that they are active in the field operationally. Is it clear?
Thank you. Yeah, I think it is. Thank you very much for the answer. The next question is, I don't want to forget any question. Okay, the next question is, I think everyone wants to know about this. Does this call cover pandemics? And the rest of the question is there something like an ideal amount of disasters included in the research? Is it possible to focus on displaced people, refugee crisis?
Yeah, I had also this question. I think it was also sent to the research executive agency. It's a little bit delicate, you know, to respond about pandemics. It's, of course it is including pandemics, but the tendency is that we are living the coronavirus crisis, and that it gives the impression to everybody that all the calls will have to be, well, all the topics will have to focus on pandemics, which is absolutely not the case. The topics of the DRS01 has been written last year. We did not obviously expect the COVID-19 to be such a drama, but it is dealing with disaster risk management of any kind. So it means that here it's more about the involvement and I would say awareness of citizens, mainly to any kind of disasters. And of course, pandemics can be used as a lesson learned, but it should not exclude all the kind of disasters, because the danger is that everybody will send proposals about pandemics, which is not what we expect. So to respond very clearly, pandemics, yes, is included. It should not exclude other type of disasters, and you may focus, actually proposals may focus on one given type of disaster, providing that it is well explained, well justified, because it's difficult to have the overall range of disasters being covered. So there is certainly proposals that will cover some generic approaches to any kind of disasters, some which will focus only on one type of disasters with more in-depth research. So so it's what I would like to say, but it's really up to the proposals to justify the approach and to be convincing towards the evaluation, to the evaluators. There is no hidden, I would say, instructions behind.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
You said about ideal amount of what? I did not catch this.
I don't quite understand the question, actually. It's the ideal amount of disasters including in the research. So I think you did answer the question. Actually.
Yeah.
About the first responders, there's another question. Can we include private first responders, the ones who operate on behalf of a private-owned airport or other critical infrastructures?
Yes, there is absolutely no reason why not. Okay. Because again, corresponding to what I said, the criteria is about the operational character. So there will be organizations, for example, even organizations of volunteers, for example, who are really acting in the field. They are entitled to be considered as first responders. So private companies, yes.
There's another question about civil society organizations that are mentioned in the call. And the question is, according to your experience, civil society organization, are they an informal prerequisite for a proposal to be accepted?
No, there is no. In fact, the addition of civil society organizations have been put because we realized that indeed they were a little bit, I would say, weak in the last topic. So we said yes, okay, we highlighted them, but it's absolutely not mandatory to include civil society organization in proposals. And if they are included, their participations have obviously to be well justified. Because there was a kind of push that saying, well, civil society organizations should be included everywhere. It's not what we expect. We expect that they are participating in topics, in proposals, when and if well justified. So proposals will have to clearly indicate why a given CSO is indeed a partner and what will be their task and participation.
Okay, another question, an interesting question. Someone talks about in the webinar, a lot of people are talking about crisis management, but the point is made that the call is about disaster risk reduction. So risk reduction happens before and after a crisis and not during. How to address this?
Well, this is a little bit tricky because let me see. Well, there is no, but well, because I don't have the text of the call in front of me. There is no mention of crisis management. It's only dealing with the quoting disaster risk reduction. Because I think that in the text of the call, I need to check that. But I think that in the text of the call, it is speaking about disaster risk reduction and crisis management. I need to check that. So crisis management is not excluded actually.
Okay.
No, absolutely not.
Okay, we had a couple of questions about budget, the 5 million euros. So people are asking whether they could use fewer share, less share of the budget to allow for other projects to be funded, or is there any room to fund any topics? So any other project. So I think for your answer, and I will let you answer that, but I will stress on something that you already said, is that there's no hidden clauses or hidden conditions that are not in the topic. Everything is written on the topic. But maybe I can let you answer that question about budget.
No, yeah, it's well. I think your response is right. About budget is always a little bit. I would say delicate to answer because the evaluators there is no obligation, obviously, if there is a 5 million contribution by the commission to request 5 million if it's not justified. So again, I will say that if there is indeed a project of limit or more, I would say limited capacity, let's say a project of 3 million euro, it has to be well justified. You know, all the actions that will be proposed, the number of partners, the type of funds, how those funds will be used and so on, has to be clearly justified. And if indeed it is cheaper than 5 million, well, so be it. If it's 499, because very often it's quite amazing. We receive proposals which are 4,999,999, euro. So it's a little bit for me sometimes a little bit funny, but it has to be clearly traceable regarding the type of finances as it will be described in the proposals. So sometimes we receive indeed some proposals which are or smaller actions. It will not be penalizing to them.
Please, if I can give some personal recommendation about this, I would recommend against diverging too much from the call prerequisites. Otherwise, unless you have a very, very good reason that you can really well justify. And please do not go over the requested budget, because in case of
No, of course,
proposals, if you have an execo, the proposal asking for more money will not be chosen. There's a very interesting question on the aspect of comparative analysis of European diversity regarding citizen risk perception and vulnerabilities. The question is, how many countries in case studies are reasonable to be included to reach a significant comparative analysis?
Well, I will come back, to the fact that we did not put criteria in this respect, and there is no hidden rules about this. It is. I'm sorry to repeat myself, but it has to be consistent and coherent. I would say that I will not give any numbers here because it might be taken as a kind of recommendation by the Commission, which I don't. I would say that the representativity of the countries and the cases that will be represented needs to be well explained and justified. If you come with Austria dealing with marine submersion, well, it will be killed. Maybe it's a little bit cynical for me to say that. If you deal with earthquake, well, the focus will be indeed about countries that will have experiences in dealing with earthquake and so on. So there is a representativity that has to cover the type of disasters that will be described, and maybe certainly the different of culture of crisis management, because we have seen in the crisis that we are living now that within the EU member states are dealing slightly differently from each other, which is which can even be a challenge. And I was a little bit sorry as an EU official to see that, but it's that the health is a prerogative of member states, so we could not really have a coordination. But actually, for this type of crisis, we are learning that we should have a better coordination. So here, what is highlighting with respect to any kind of disasters is that the countries will maybe behave and react differently. So it has to cover this kind of differences and diversity and be well explained in the proposals. But there is no rules regarding the numbers. It has to be consistent with the type of cases that will be considered in the projects.
Thank you. We have a very, very relevant question asked by our friends from the Spanish. The topic's open for the first time. So there are already projects that have been awarded in 2018. We should expect the contestants to propose something different or complementary to what has been already funded. Do you recommend to include other crises? So we already addressed the question of pandemics, and to integrate information from formerly funded projects. And the second question will be, how can participants access info about 2018 and 2019 funded projects?
Well, I think well, obviously projects have to be a certain degree of innovation. So it should not repeat what has been funded so far. So it has to be complementary or dealing with something which has not yet been tackled. So the information about the 2018 call projects are is available, I guess. You can ask to the Research Executive Agency. I guess that for 19, it's also the case because the grant agreements are now being signed for almost all of them. I need to check that. So in principle, you should have at least the title, the abstract, and the consortium available on Cordis, but I need to check that. But I'm not 100% sure. But the information should be made available. So it means that in this case, the proposals should at least show that they are knowing these actions. There is no obligation whatsoever to have any bridge made with these proposals, regarding partners. You can have, well, it's a choice that have to be followed by proposals, but at least knowing that the proposals are aware about what is going on with respect to these topics it's a good asset, and maybe suggests that there are some possible synergies that could be built with the proposals, and explain how, because this is also certainly something that we will be looking at in the future more and more within the community of users. We really want to do that, to ensure that under a given topic, for example, DRS01, we are bringing all together the projects to discuss what kind of joint action could be undertaken. So it should not be necessarily reflected in the partnership, obviously, but it should be a kind of windows open. And we have seen that for the 2018 call, the fact that we made them meet in January this year has been quite effective in establishing a dialogue instantly. I would say the fact that we are bringing this project together bring new ideas, so it should be reflected somehow, not formally yet, because we don't ask synergies to be established at this stage, but maybe providing this kind of opportunity for the future. That is, you are not working in isolation. The proposals are not starting from scratch. It's a continuation of a research orientation that have started 2 years ago, and it has to be shown as a kind of continuum.
Okay. We also have received a bit of criticism in the questions sections about the topic being oriented towards psychology, citizen participation. This discussion, this webinar has been merely about technology. So yes, this the full spectrum of the topic is just an opportunity to give some illustration to you. The spirit, you have the same spirit tomorrow in the 2 other webinars on DRS02, DRS03. It's a good opportunity to have testimonies from people giving some other point of view, and as a complement, Korea has been cited because it was interesting, because they had a special way of dealing with the disaster management. It doesn't mean that Korea has to be included in your projects. It doesn't mean doesn't mean that particularly. It was just as an example. Korea among these, so we can you can include from Korea. There's another question on the
sorry. I'm sorry, because the audio is very, very bad.
And not only Oh, so I repeat the question. What is the interest of the call to cover all the phases of the resilience cycle?
Oh gosh.
Jérôme, we don't hear you very well. I think
no, I don't understand. Yeah.
Issue? Yes, Jérôme?
Oh, I'm sorry, you're losing me. Can you hear me now?
No, I think we can not hear you anymore, Jérôme. So I suggest what we can do. Thank you very much, because we lost Jérôme. So I can suggest that we can ask the question by email. You can send the question to Sarah and we'll send them to Philip.
Yeah.
So I'd like to thank you very much, Jean-Claude, Paul-Henri, for your very interesting and valuable talk. Thank you so much, Philippe and Giro, for the question and answer session. The question reflected that everybody had a great interest in the DRS01 topic. A special thank to my colleagues in Saran 4 and to Safe Cluster for their support and for their help in organizing this webinar. Thank you all for your participation and the questions you asked. So we look forward to seeing you participating again tomorrow to the 2 webinars about DRS. So we'll tell you bye bye, and we hope to see you tomorrow. Okay, bye bye everybody.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.